It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in, tune in, tune in, tune in.
We spoke about challenges with hiring talent. What have been some of the challenges of being a Black developer? Because there's, you know the numbers. There's not that many Black developers compared to other folks. So what's that been like for you?
Whew, that's a good one. I think, there is unfortunately a stigma of where there's not an automatic sense of capability and capacity when you come into a room or to a meeting, right? And so, there is this constant urge of having to validate capacity, experience, and all those things before you can even have a conversation, right? So that's one thing. I think, access to capital has always been, tough, right? Because that comes with relationships, and those relationships just systematically, historically haven't been established between folks that look like me and institutional investors, right? And there's been a gap there. And I think, also too is, just the inherent transfer of real estate is sometimes is relational too, right? The best deals are not the ones that hit the MLS. The best deals are the networking, I won't even say off market, but just relational things that come. And so when you're not in that network, you don't get that access to the net worth either. And so those have been some hurdles. We've definitely done some things to help, get over that. But, there's been times where, I've been at the property and, people walk by and, walk by me and go to the contractor and ask a question to him like he's the owner, right? And those things hurt emotionally, right? You got to kind of peel yourself back. And those things are, like I said, they're not things that just go away, and things that we got to fight against on a daily basis.
Definitely. I appreciate your transparency on that. Makes a lot of sense. What are some reasons that how can we get more Black developers, more Black folks in construction, more Black folks leading property management companies? What are some things that come to mind for you?
I think one is we got to be doing a better job of promoting folks that look like me and other Black developers to see that it's possible, right? Because, there's only a handful of folks that I could have pointed to before I got into this. I say, okay, they look like me, they've been successful. And sometimes that's 90% of the thing is, okay, this is actually an attainable goal. And so making sure that we get exposure and platforms like you're providing are awesome, pieces of that. And then the other part is education. It started this in our colleges, our universities, and our high schools, post that for folks to start, getting immersed into the environment, but understanding the dynamics of how real estate works. That doesn't even have to be from, this big commercial experience, right? It's just, figuring out how to buy your first house. Most folks can graduate college, but don't understand the mechanics of what it takes to go and buy their first home. And, you use those same mechanics to grow, and you get the basics and build those up to bigger deals. But we need to be pouring in and making that a part of, our curriculums and extracurricular activities to make sure that those folks are doing that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like, I didn't know what a real estate developer was until less than 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 32 years old.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a developer, like, you see all these buildings, you see stuff going up. I never thought about who built it. I just thought it was, I don't know, some rich people or some big company, but I'd never even imagined that I could be sitting talking to you, someone who's like about to build 900 units. That's a story for so many people. So I agree with you. I think it's something we need to normalize. Like, it is attainable because, there are folks who look like us and come from similar backgrounds who are doing things all across the board within real estate. So I definitely second that.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. So one thing I saw when I was doing some research is that y'all have done some condo conversions. And we haven't had anybody on the show who's done a condo conversion, at least that I'm aware of. Could you talk a bit more about that and what went into deciding to convert it to a condo rather than another exit?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So back to the letter campaigns, right? We were sending out letters to zip codes that we wanted to be in, and we sent a letter out, and the lady called us back, and she said, hey, I know you want to buy my property in Tremaine, but I don't want to sell this, but I got this property in the French Quarter that you should come and take a look at. And I was like, this lady's African American. There's no black people that own property in the French Quarter. She may think she in the French Quarter, but she's not, right? Because that's, people can say they're property in the French Quarter, but they're not. And so she said, well, just meet me at the property, and we met her at the property, and for sure, she had a property 2 blocks off of Bourbon Street. Wow. It was in terrible condition, and it had been abandoned since Katrina. It had been passed down multiple generations, with her grandmother and grandfather being one of the first African American homeowners or owners of properties in the French Quarter. And we established a relationship. Right, she had some high asking price that she wanted, and finally we kind of got to realistic terms, and then we got to a selling price, and then we had to let her know, like, hey, we really ain't got the money to do this deal, right? Could you finance it for us? Could you serve as the bank and let us go raise some private capital, do the renovations, and then we'll sell it? And so after a couple months, she finally said, hey, look, I've got this higher offer, but I see something in y'all and I want to support y'all, and I'm going to finance the deal. You don't have to pay me any payments until 12 months, and y'all just go do find the money, do the renovations. And we end up converting that building into luxury condos, 2 luxury condos. And it was a whole experience dealing with the historical commission and renovations, and basically we just went all in. Everything we had, we threw into that property, and we ended up selling it for the highest. It became the most expensive condo sold in the French Quarter at that time, and it was a great success story. And then we found another building that was bigger, and we did the same thing. And that was really kind of our transition from small multifamily properties, because now we had these dollars that we could 1031 exchange into a large apartment building, right? And it was definitely a heavy lift, and we always go back to those times. But Miss Sandra, she was so instrumental. I talk about those relationships, and where the gaps are. We benefited from that gap on the other side, because she looked at somebody that looked like her son or her nephew and said, hey, I want to help that person out, and we definitely benefited from that.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. You mentioned dealing with the historical district folks. What was that experience like? Were they very difficult about certain modifications? Like, how does that typically work?
Oh, man. I think that's probably one of the most protected districts. You have, in New Orleans, we have the Historic District Landmark Commission, which, takes over a lot of our city, right? A lot of our city is historic. And so they make sure that the exterior colors and the type of wood that you use and the type of windows and everything that they can see from the street is approved. Well, the French Quarter has this whole other body on top of that, which basically is preserving everything around the building and even some of the interior things. And so, us being our first foray into this, we made a lot of mistakes, right? We started changing out windows, and they like, hold up, purple sign on the door, like, you can't do this. You got to come in this meeting and tell us why you did this. And, it was a learning experience for us to start to deal with some of those political things. Full circle though, one of our business partners, he's on the board of the Vieux Carré. And so, it is a full circle moment, but that was very difficult for 2, 25-year-old guys and the black dudes at the French Quarter trying to do luxury real estate was definitely a heavy lift.
Definitely, man. That's incredible. So we talked about it a little bit throughout the interview, but a big problem is access to capital. Mm-hmm. And so how have y'all been able to raise capital? And now you're to the point where you're at the institutional level. So you mentioned Goldman Sachs. Mm-hmm. How's it been like for you, and what tips do you have for someone out there who's looking to do similar things, but the raising capital part has been challenging? Maybe they're scared, or maybe they just keep getting a lot of rejections.
Yeah, look, rejection is a part of it. When you start asking people for money, you're probably going to be, at best, when you first starting out, 70%, right? So I got 10 times as many banks and investors that have told me no than have told yes. So I think you kind of got to get comfortable with the no's, but you also got to learn the language, right? And that takes time, experience, and being willing to get, to take your shots, right? You got to get reps. So, I may go into this meeting, I may bomb, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and say, hey, what could I have done differently? Like, what were you really like listening for? Why didn't I get that deal? And most of the time they will give you some feedback like, hey, look, we need to see more experience, or maybe you need to bring a partner in on a deal, or hey, we really didn't get a clear vision of how you're going to cover debt service or how are you going to return equity. And so you kind of take those building blocks and those learning lessons and get around those folks, right? And so a lot of times what I would do is when I would go to these network events, I would go hang with the bankers and I would say nothing, right? I would just sit there with my little drink and I would listen to them talk and hear them talk about what their pain points are and what they wanted to see in a deal and why this deal wasn't good. And I'm just kind of like downloading all the information. So when I'm putting my professional presentation together, right? So that's another point is you don't walk into a meeting and ask for money without a professional presentation, right? So when I'm putting that together, I've got all that data and that just kind of stacks up, right? Because now friends and family, they want a certain type of information and what that looks like. You kind of hit that mode. Same with local banks. Then when you get to institutional, like, it's like all Madden, right? So now you got to make sure that you come correct and learn that those different levels of lingo and what they want to see as well too. So it's as much about trial and error as it is, being able to download information and ultimately show folks, what they want and be able to communicate that clearly.
What's up, y'all? Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. Thank you so much for watching another episode. Definitely take a moment to subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Also, visit our website, blackrealestatedialogue.com, and follow on Instagram @Black Real Estate Dialogue. Talk to you soon.